Any quick volunteers for reading the Credo?
I can.
Okay.
The Pellin Credo. Ground rules for the Peter Fleming Forum. The ground rules in the Pellin Credo are designed to support a safe, nourishing environment. 1. We ask that you come to the meeting with a clear head, free of the influence of drink and drugs. 2. In any Pellin setting, you keep control of the pace and depth of your sharing. You may pass or say no to any suggestion. Your no will be accepted and not judged or analyzed. No means no. 3. Even though the meetings are recorded, we ask that people respect the confidentiality of those present and do not share anything they heard outside the meeting. 4. In Pellin work, we have a strict no gossip rule. No gossip means we do not talk about anyone who is not present, even in a pleasant way.
Okay, thank you. I'm Peter and I'm in Norfolk, England. You want to go next, Nikki?
Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm in Wimbledon, London.
Mary in England.
I'm Mary. I'm in Eastbourne, south coast of England.
Mary in Mexico.
Mary in Rosarito Beach, Mexico.
Johnny.
Hi, Johnny Avila here in Los Angeles, California.
Cynthia.
Cynthia, and I'm in Kankakee, Illinois.
Elizabeth.
I'm Elizabeth, and I'm in Eugene, Oregon.
Okay. We're starting a little bit late.
Excuse me, Peter. I just
Yeah.
wanted to remind people to mute themselves when they're not speaking.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we're starting a little bit late, so that will be a motivation for me to try and be succinct, okay? The topic of this forum is the Pellin life forces, the Pellin tool of attraction to hurt, and how they relate to the connection between politics and therapy. I want this to be fairly hard hitting, okay? And maybe I'll get that bit out first. But one of the assumptions and places we come from all the time as Pellin practitioners, Pellin therapists, social workers, counselors, we always start with health and strength first. Just to put that in a certain context, that different, what in my field is called the medical model, where you start with the problem and the diagnosis. We start with the health in someone rather than the illness. And just to almost sneak a bit of training in, sometimes that might be, this much in time. Someone's coming to you with a whole lot of stuff. Let's talk about how I'm suicidal, okay? And there's no way out of it for me. How do you find the strength and health first? So you struggle, and this approach was developed working in prisons. So there's nothing soft about it. But you can always find it. You can always find it. Okay, you want to kill yourself, but what was one good thing that's happened over the last 6 months? And I mean, that's might be all you get in, right? But as a discipline, we always find a way to start with strength and health first. So given in this, I'm going to be quite critical of my field. I guess I want to start with the positive. And one of the most important statement in the therapeutic field for me personally. This is a personal statement more than it's a Pellin statement. And that's the statement, I am Bill, I'm an alcoholic. He didn't say, I am Bill, I'm the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is this great organization. No, he said, no, I'm Bill, I'm an alcoholic. So the strength and health in our field can really be when we connect with people, to use a phrase of the great Carl Rogers, person to person, where we connect with people from our vulnerability, and we can connect with people as a person before as a professional. And that is, in a sense, in terms of the life forces, is never losing contact with our caring life force. And in terms of the application of these tools and the concept of attraction to hurt, which, you know, as you know, I've taught elsewhere, other times here, I believe within our tools, we can have a great deal of precision. I also think that we've got some really good stuff and we can see far, but we can see far because we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And then the giants whose shoulders we're standing on are also standing on the shoulders of their giants. But from that place, we can make bold statements. And in terms of just to sort of generalize it for a moment, the human insight that can come from a therapeutic point of view, whether it's Freudian or as, they're very considerable. You know, we've taken human understanding a long way, our field of work. And yet, this is the hard stuff, that potential contribution we have to make is not widely recognized. It just isn't. And it isn't in politics. You know, in politics, conventional religion has a place. Physical medicine has a place. You can be a minister of religion. You can be a doctor. You can certainly be a lawyer. And run for Congress, run for the Senate, run for in our country, run for the House of Parliament. Try doing that as a psychiatrist, okay? It's not going to be that easy. And one of the things that we're looking at today, and one of the things I want to be part of this new and ambitious theme for me, making sort of Pellin up front I hardly have the words for it. It's so sort of new. But yeah, making it a therapeutic organization that is engaged in politics directly. And that's not quite right because I'm not going to run for parliament, but you know, I want to get something in there. And one thing I want to look at is why we're not respected, okay? You know, at times in England, psychiatrists are called trick cyclists. Other times, humanistic side of the work is sort of called touchy-feely or psychobabble. I know this is stuff I touched on last week, but I'm making it a bit tighter, I think, for me. And I feel the reason that occurs, and this is the con we put out, okay? And, you know, I'm sort of claiming the part of me that I haven't claimed for some generations, really, some decades, of being a fierce and radical critic of my own field. And I feel I have a responsibility, given I've been given opportunities, and, you know, I've also got the blessing, no other way to look at it, you know, of having the genes and longevity. I mean, that's just luck. That's a lottery in life. So I feel what happens is we come across superior. Those of us who work, you know, those of us who have a makeup that's, you know, more or less like that. I'm holding up the circles, Nikki, and it's, you know, almost all yellow, almost all caring life force. You know, we have a lot of vulnerability. We will be people who make mistakes. We will be people who go through divorces, who don't always protect themselves, don't always come out looking like one of life's winners, to use a, you know, rather simplistic way of looking at it. So in a sense, to put it more simply, we sort of hide vulnerabilities and weaknesses. We come across superior, but because in fact we've got all this caring life force, our vulnerabilities and weaknesses are visible. The way this happened for me, and I might have told this story before, but I guess I want it recorded on this session because I'm trying to put the whole argument straightforwardly and simply here. There's a man called Sololinsky. He's rather a dated figure now, but he was the father of the movement that was community organization, okay? And Hillary Clinton's MA thesis was on Sololinsky. And of course, Barack Obama, first went into politics was as a community organizer. So Sololinsky was a very famous figure, and I studied with him a bit. And he was very charismatic. And we're a group of social workers and counselors and parole officers who were his audience to give this presentation to, of his material about community organization and grassroots community organization. That was his purpose. And he was charismatic. And he looked around the audience and he said, you know, you're having an affair that your spouse doesn't know about. You've got trouble with money. You know, you've got a drinking problem. You know, you can't get on with your friends. You know, you don't visit your kids enough after the divorce. You're just doing this rhetorical thing of sort of calling out this audience. And, you know, you are the superior people coming in and helping people with their mental health problems, and yet you yourself have these weaknesses. And he was very good at it. You know, he got us. And, you know, but he took it a step too far, and he certainly took it a step too far for me, because then it was, so you should all stop doing what you're doing and become community organizers, okay? but because there you'll be forced to not hide behind your professional role. This was his point of view. And I could see he got me and he got everyone else, but I thought, you know, there's got to be something wrong with that. I mean, I think some of the work we do is really useful, and I don't have it in me to be a community organizer. You know, to be a community organizer, you got to be, you know, you got to be a Barack Obama type, you know, out there in a strange place with all your inherent confidence in our work, in our tools, with all your performance life force. You know, what Mary was talking about earlier, just coming on with all that stuff. I thought, I'm not going to be, you know, I'm pretty good at what I do. I'm not going to be a good community organizer. And that was the start, almost, of what has become in Pellin transparency. And this was before I'd come across Bill, the founder of AA, or AA itself. Because Bill, of course, with the particular sort of genius he had to create an organization that was so successful, I mean, he developed something where just took that argument couldn't even be thrown at him. I'm Bill, I'm an alcoholic. You know, take me on, Solomonsky, if you want to. And I thought, well, that's only a valid argument if we are, in fact, something of a con shot, because we can't be open about our own vulnerabilities and our own weaknesses. And then I sort of started developing transparency, and other things came into that. So what we're looking at there, and it is the case as well, that you can, these days, you can in politics own up to going to AA meetings, and you won't be taken down for it. But as a politician, you've got to be careful. If you say, I'm seeing a therapist, it might be the end of your career. So what we're looking at here, one of the things we're looking at here is we are not a group of people, the therapeutic side of the world. We are not a group of people who are going to be good at hiding it. We're just not. We're going to be seen, or it's going to pop out. Or we have a real need to say who we are. So it's sort of almost sneaking out under the door, you know, seeping in under the door, because we want to be open, but the profession is set up, and from Freud onward, particularly, the profession is set up, and in some schools of psychotherapy, you are not allowed to talk about yourself. It is unethical to talk about yourself. So then we don't get respect. And the people, you know, we're great at one-to-one, okay? And we're pretty good in small groups. But in the wider world, we are sort of perceived as hiding something. This is my theory. And within that, the power of what we have to offer simply gets cut to pieces. You know, I'm being fairly severe about this, but I do think that's what happens. And that's sort of sad, because we have a lot to offer. I have no doubt we have a lot to offer, but somehow or other we haven't found a way to deliver it simply, to deliver it without coming across with superiority, because superiority does not suit us. I mean, there's people who know. When, in a particular way, I can get into talking about how good I am at the work I do, okay? And even to use an example here, I'm embarrassed, okay? Because whenever I get into that thing, as Nikki knows, it never works. You know, I can't do it. I cannot do it well, okay? You know, someone who's, you know, a young star in Hollywood, or, you know, a lawyer or a painter or a politician, they can do that stuff really well. I think the way, but those of us in the caring life force can't do it very well. And somehow or other, how the hell he did it, but also how the hell he set up an organization that's after, I'm talking about Alcoholics Anonymous, relatively free of scandal. I mean, that, and there are certain ways he did it. And somehow or other he took this thing that I'm in my own particular, you know, times a bit heavy-handed theoretical way, is analyzing, and just, he took that and snuffed it out right at the beginning. I'm Bill, I'm an alcoholic. And everyone knows I'm the founder of this thing, and this thing is marvelous. But what I'm saying to you is I'm Bill, I'm an alcoholic. I guess the best of conventional religion or the Roman Catholic Church is probably the preachers and the priests who can say, I too am a sinner. The way this comes into attraction to hurt, because there's a whole part of attraction to hurt that's very positive. There's a whole part of attraction to hurt, and particularly, if you remember other work, particularly when the calluses soften or slip. So we're really facing the attraction to hurt. There's a whole part of attraction to hurt that can be really powerful, okay? It can be full of purpose. It can be full of contribution from hurt. You can see it every day at this time in Black Lives Matter. You just see it there. And the history, because a friend of mine knows Colin, I can't pronounce his name. Can someone help me? Kekelback?
I think it's something like Capernic or something like that.
Capernic, thank you, yeah. Yeah, a friend of mine knows him well. And, you know, no one was accepting him when he first did it, or very few. And now, you know.
You better say what the it is for people. That
Yeah,
might not know.
kneeling, you know, taking a knee. He literally one person started that. He started that, taking a knee at a football game. He was a quarterback. He took a knee at a football game. He wanted to protest, and a friend of his, who I think had been in the military, said, you know, one thing you could do is kneel. I mean, that, as it happens now in this day and age, you know, at a particular time in history right now, that was a historical moment when he first did that. And, you know, he paid a heavy price. Like, it cost him his career. You know, so he was going to be one of the, you know, the heroic, large, you know, he's going to be a David Beckham of America. And he lost his career. No one would employ him. So, I mean, you know, the risk of that, the attraction to hurt, the taking it on, And that's got to be, I mean, that's got to be a performance life force that's off the wall. But as a person, you know, he had enough caring life force that, you know, people picked up, there is something genuine about this. There's something genuine about this guy. But, yeah, it took a long time. Yeah, it took months, years. That's what, 3 years ago now? He first took a knee? I think so. And he had no idea that, you know, now he's the person who invented a political symbol that's being practiced all over the world. As I said here, you know, it happened in the park, little park across the street from where my flat is, 3 weeks ago. You know, and it was a group of, you know, this is a very white conservative part of England where I live. And that was a group of probably something like 100 people, a mixed group, old and young. It wasn't just young people, by a long shot. So the attraction to hurt takes us in to moments of very significant political change. And at that time, we need all the strength we can get from our performance life force. We're not going to make it without that. We are not going to make it if we've got a whole bunch of caring life force that is most prominent. It's hard to say, but the way Mary spoke when she was telling the story early on, we want to have that sort of internal sense of belief, almost that internal tingling, that internal sense of our own importance that we can get from the performance life force. So just to, you know, to go back to my critical bit at the beginning, we don't know how to come across my professions, and from Freud onward, don't know how to come across. So we present enough of our human vulnerability. We present enough of who we are as a whole person. So we connect with people, so we are believed by a wide audience. That's the bit that doesn't happen. Patients or clients, you know, there's no problem there. Even if someone's, you know, more a Freudian analyst, you know, one-to-one, a small group like this will be okay. Take it into a wider audience and something really goes wrong. And what goes wrong means that the wisdom that this field has to offer is not available to people outside of this field. And most people are outside of this field, not inside. The power of the performance life force, of having people believe in us, you know, Colin proved that. You know, he had, you know, the performance life force is there to the point where he did something and the whole world caught on. And on the one hand, I'm saying it took time and he lost his career, but in terms of looking at political history, you know, 2 or 3 years to get a powerful political symbol of a cross, that's a very short period of time. You know? So, you know, this guy somewhere is a natural politician, that's for sure. And the attraction to hurt comes in and provides us at times with a clear set of eyes where we can really see what's going on. Something happens, you know, in say a couple in a marriage, you know, squabble all the time. They fight all the time. The kids don't like how they fight, but they're callous to it. You know, they're callous to how hurtful and sort of nasty they're being to each other. You know, they've fell into that pattern. But then something happens. Say one of the kids is in an accident. All of a sudden, those calluses are just dropped. Those calluses are sort of forced to not be. I'm a bit distracted because I was just talking about Colin at great length, okay, and kneeling. So I want to say that to Elizabeth, who just came in, because she's a friend of mine who knows Colin. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
No, who? No, who?
Colin.
Oh, Colin. Yeah, I know Colin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't.
I did.
I came in the middle. I thought, oh, you're talking about Colin. Okay, yeah. No, I don't Colin. Yeah.
So yeah, I was just in the middle of saying all that, and where I was saying it from was that my field of work, the wisdom we have to offer is not available and accepted by the general public because we don't know how to be open about ourselves, which we need to do because we've got all this caring life force. And yet, in terms of attraction to hurt, and we callous to attraction to hurt. You know, we callous to the hurt we're causing, the hurt we're around, the hurt that's being caused to us, the hurt we're causing to other people. So, talking about America now, the nation calluses to its racism. And then something happens, like in the family, you know, one of the children has an accident, the husband and wife in the family have got to face the calluses of how they're being nasty to each other and how the kids don't like it. Something happened with George Floyd that the calluses just, you know, were pulled apart. They were just pulled apart. But that's a bit chancy, okay? You know, because, you know, we're talking on the one hand, just a hypothetical example of a couple who are being nasty to each other and callous to it. And the kids don't like it, but they think, oh, that's just the way we are. That's just the way we are. And they're forced to look at how they are. Just, yeah. America has been forced to look at how we are. Yeah, Mary.
I have a bit of a different take, or complementary take maybe, on why our profession isn't respected, and I think it's to do with the life forces. I think that in a white male-dominated society, the performance and material life force in particular are much more respected, and caring life force is kind of soft. And apart from some top surgeons or psychiatrists or something, people who work in the caring life force, looking after sick people, or, you know, counselors, are not highly valued. And a lot of the low wage jobs are caring life force jobs. So I don't know how you see that as fitting in, but I think that's the, you know, you're coming from how our profession does harm to itself with dealing with people, things, and hiding ourselves. But society-wise, the caring life force is not respected. And from my feminist perspective, I see that as that it's seen as a more feminine type quality, to be caring and nurturing and collaborative and thoughtful about other people. And so it's kind of underneath in a power way.
Yeah, no, I accept that, and there's no part of that. That's part of it. But how many people know who Robert Coles is? Okay, but not many. And how many people are sort of interviewing Robert Coles these days? Robert Coles was a Harvard psychiatrist who wrote a whole bunch of books. They're really prominent, like he wrote 40 books, Harvard psychiatrist. And his early books were called Children of Crisis, and his first book was what are the psychological effects of the children who integrated the schools. The children who integrated the schools after the High Court judgment. And that was sort of well-beating. But somehow or other, I just want to hold on to this bit. Somehow that we do something that, who is Martin Luther King? Who is Stokely Carmichael? Who is Malcolm X? Everyone knows all those people. We do something in our field. I personally think, and I think this is part of both the caring life force and the feminist and the male dominated or the matriarchal or the patriarchal side of things. I think we come across as superior, and people don't buy it. I go back to the Sololinsky thing when he challenged us and said, you're a bunch of frauds because you've got the same problems as your clients or patients have. And that's, I'm just reiterating for you, Elizabeth, that was the start of my concept of transparency. And then using as the example, somehow that even Robert Coles couldn't do what Bill did. Robert Coles, for everything he had, and Elizabeth Rosenberg.
So I've been thinking of an article I read recently where there was a writer for a board game company who was facing racism at work.
I missed a word there. What sort of company?
Board game.
Oh, yeah. Okay, thanks.
Cards Against Humanity, specifically. Great name for it. Anyway, and he was facing racism from work from the top, and was very reasonably upset. And his response was enough that enough people were concerned that he was involuntarily committed to a psychiatric institution. And while he was there, this white psychiatrist was evaluating him, and he was explaining the racial situation. And what ended up in his file was paranoia and racial delusions, because her experience of the world didn't include the kind of things he had to deal with, because she was white. And I'm thinking about how if people in that position are not vulnerable, are not transparent, and not willing to admit their limitations, then their biases remain unexamined, and they lose the trust of marginalized communities. And I think that's part of the problem.
that is sort of spot on in terms of my analysis and where my work came from, because you might remember my academic background was in economics and political science, and there was a very famous Swedish economist called Gunnar Myrdal. He also wrote the first major study of what were then called Negroes in America, but he was mainly an economist. And I said, you know, this is something he stayed with me from university days. And he said, economists need to say what their values are, because economists claim to be objective. And it was just, I remember it was just in the preface to his book. It was a book on economic development. And because their values affect their work as economists, okay? Way back, like in the 50s, 60s in my field, there was a sort of a part of anyone's training that was called values clarification. So you had to sort of say what your values were, because, you know, we're human. What the point of view is, we're human and our values are going to affect our practice. And I think you're totally right, Elizabeth. That sort of stuff doesn't happen. It gets closed down. And I feel the reason we're not respected is we come across superior and patronizing. And, you know, that a lot of that goes back to Freud. Freud had an addiction to cigars that it ended up killing him, but he was in pain a great deal of his life. It was completely hidden from the world and certainly hidden from his patients. And, you know, when in a meeting a group of, as I've said here before, you know, I guess the equivalent, I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I guess my equivalent is, I'm Bill, I'm an alcoholic, is I'm Peter and I've had 4 divorces. You know, and just saying that to a group of people I've just met. You can't then, well, unless you're an evil person, you can't then do what the example you gave. I don't think you can do it. I think you'd have a sort of, I hope you'd have a certain sort of awareness that that wouldn't be possible. But if you're hiding all your own vulnerabilities, if you're rationalizing them away because you've developed a great new theory called contribution training or psychoanalysis, you're not coming from you as a human being. And then if we're not coming from where we are as a human being, we've got the temptation to have the power of being able to put the diagnosis on somebody. Because I knew someone, it affected me. It was a funny story this person told, and it was before I got into this field. It was when I was sort of traveling, and you know, and still essentially going to be an economist in the Australian government. And someone told me this story. He's a rather odd, tall, rather gangly man. And he'd been in New York and he'd had a sort of breakdown. And he ended up, I can't remember the name of it, but one of the big mental hospitals. I guess the police had taken him there. And he heard a voice come over the loudspeaker. He said, I know that guy. I went to school with that guy, okay? So he told someone, I know, because someone's calling, oh no, the voice wasn't the person he knew. The voice was calling for Dr. So-and-so. And he thought, that's the guy I know. I went to school with that guy. And of course, And he was right, he did. And he thought, you know, if I can find my old buddy, maybe he can help me in this mess I've got myself into. But because he knew the voice that was coming from the loudspeaker, they diagnosed him as, you know, delusional. And it took him some time to find his buddy. And the more he insisted, he knew this person, and he'd gone to university with him, the more they sort of were insistent on their diagnosis. And, you know, those sort of stories, you know, almost can't say it, but yeah, those sort of stories aren't that uncommon any more than cops killing young black men are uncommon. Elizabeth Rosenberg.
Okay. I just saw mentally what I think may be a connection between what you're saying here and what Mary in Rosarito was saying about, you know, carrying life force in the feminine, which is this, that, you know, why is it that people in psychiatry, in therapy, place themselves in an unassailable, invulnerable position when it hinders their work? And I think it may be sort of a, you know, I want to say industry, but that's not the word I'm looking for. Wide fear of appearing vulnerable and soft and feminine. That it's a hardening up that hinders the work, but what they're aiming for is the respect that often isn't given to people with a lot of caring life force.
Yeah. Elizabeth Hurwitz.
Great discussion. I'm sorry I couldn't join earlier. First, just backwards, to Elizabeth's point about the fear of appearing vulnerable and soft if you have a significant caring life force. There's an expression that always came back to me about I don't want to be a doormat. I don't want to be a rug under somebody's feet, right? So that's in men and women, there is a buffering that, you know, your caring life force lives behind sometimes because you don't have strong enough boundaries to let that caring life force out. And boundaries are, at least in my personal experience, essential for being able to express my life force of caring. And then winding it back a little bit further, when you were talking about transparency, Peter, and transparency on all different levels, I've been struggling with this idea that, you know, if a person is in a relationship, maybe it's, you know, your relationships, you know, with your clients and stuff, but maybe it's just, you know, person to person in business or something. And the people are of different races, okay? And the white person goes through that experience of transparency and discloses as much as she or he is aware of his or her prejudices and opinions that, you know, need to be worked through, right? The thing I've noticed is that there's something under that. Once you've done that with someone, there's like another you. there's another kind of you that's underneath that comes out once that transparency has happened between two people. Does this make any sense? It's a different
No, I think that's true. And you know, if we go back, well, you know, if I just stay with a couple of those couple of examples
Uh-huh.
that, you know, I wanted in the recorded material and then in our lineage, you know, Gunnar Myrdal saying, you know, economists have got to say what their values are, what their value system is, because that is going to affect their economic theory.
Right.
And I think if you take that one, and of course he did it, and he went on to become a sociologist and made the first great study of Afro-Americans in America in the 1940s. So I think something else does come out.
Right.
And I think if you take the Alcoholics Anonymous example of, you know, I'm Bill, I'm an alcoholic, then, you know, I think that opened up all this practicality. Hey, let's set up an organization that doesn't have any structure and therefore doesn't have any money involved. If we set up an organization like that, maybe we'll avoid corruption.
Right.
You know, I mean, you know, they should, they use the word themselves, you know, these are, you know, a bunch of old drunks sitting around creating an organization.
Right.
And that particular insight has, you know, made it mainly, even you know, even Planned Parenthood has scandal, you know.
Right.
And AA sort of tends not to, really does. So I think when you do get it, when you do get into transparency, when you do take the risk, when you do sort of let go of the facade, I think a whole lot of other stuff can come up. Yeah, Mary, just hold on a minute. Mary.
Oh, it's okay. Elizabeth can finish that.
Okay,
I'm making
Elizabeth.
a different point.
Peter, in just stepping back a little bit, when that level of transparency has been worked with, okay, with between people, okay, or a person is disclosing, right, and that other sense of self emerges, how do we talk about that sense of self in terms of the Pellin material? What is that? Is that
well,
the
no, I think what you do, I guess I'd say there, you know, paraphrasing Nancy Pelosi, pendulum, 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 okay? You know, test. I think it's okay, because whenever I do it, you know, because, you know,
you do it all the time.
my divorces were the worst time of my life. You know, it's not something I pleased about, proud of, or anything. And when I sort of have that moment, okay, I am going to say this, okay, and I think, well, maybe I don't need to say it this time, you know,
Right.
because you know, and I think, no, come on. If you don't say it, this is what goes in my head. If you don't say it today, you're probably going to say it in 2 or 3 weeks' time, because I got these people for 6 weeks. I'll get it over with, you know. And I say it, you know, the group to which I'm saying, a lot of them are quite conventional, quite, you know, born again, quite church oriented, you know, particular Afro-Caribbean communities in London, England, and other parts of England. And I know, you know, you get a couple of people who, well, why is he here? How can he have anything to teach us, right? But, you know, so I guess what you do is you sort of steady yourself, okay? And I guess, and if we go back to, you know, I'm Bill, I'm an alcoholic, you know, you steady yourself, you probably look at your support system. And in terms of Pellin too, well, and then the other thing is when your purpose is involved, you know, when you've really got a purpose around this. And I guess, because I talked quite a bit about Colin before he came on, and I mean, he was alone in that almost. So, you know, that was my guess. And yet attraction to hurt was there, but purpose was there. You know, lost his career. I mean, you know, it's a bit hard to be attacked by the president of your country and a lot of other people. And he could have had no idea. I mean, he couldn't have had any idea of the success of what he did. So, I mean, I would say somehow or other, this is me being arrogant, God came down and gave Colin the Pellin pendulum, okay? Or in some other, you know, he had the common sense, put it in a more sensible way, he had the common sense, this is where I'd put the Pellin tools in, he had the common sense to be able to hold on to, and this is where the middle of the pendulum and the calm, you know, is not sort of tranquility. You know, there can be as much passion in the calm as there is on the other extremes of the pendulum, to say, okay, I believe in this, and my God, I'm going to have to be steady about it, whatever his words were. I've got to be steady about it. Mary Gulliman.
I was thinking about how when you work with people, your instrument is yourself. Like in the performance life force, you're running or you're playing an instrument or you're saying some words you may or may not have written yourself. You're interacting with something else. And in the material life force, clearly you're interacting with figures, or you're interacting with the earth if you're a farmer. You know, you're interacting with other things, and it's not all about you and your heart. So I don't quite know how that fits in, but it's like, I suppose in a way it's a thought that's a bit of the extension of feeling the caring life force is not societally valued. It's like, well, also, and I understand that superior things really relevant to outside people not getting our profession as well. Like, well, you know, but a lot of, you know, people don't get what's the value of sitting in a room and talking.
Well, I would still challenge it. You know, I'm coming from the place in this session of challenging my profession and challenging what Sol Lindsay called the contract of us.
The what, sorry?
Con.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as in confidence man, con man.
Well, can I just say, I'm not in any way arguing against that.
No.
I'm thinking that when what you're using is you, there's a kind of understandability when you don't know the tremendous power of transparency. It's an understandable fear as alongside the snobbishness or something like that. Don't quite know.
Oh, no, we're really vulnerable. I mean, there's no question about that. And even it's not as bad as it used to be. Yeah, I mean, the good side of Harvard University Psychiatry Department, which is, you know, the most prestigious in the country, was Robert Coles. But for decades, there was a part of Harvard University Psychiatry Department that were determined, absolutely determined, to rubbish and take down Alcoholics Anonymous. And they still pop up every now and then, and they've got all these theories. It's only effective because it's a quasi-religious cult or something. They do all this stuff. So yeah, I don't deny the opposition's there, but I think if we can come, what you're saying, if we can come from who we really are, and if we can come from the caring life force, then I think we can begin to sort of chip away at the prejudice against us, because there's another way of looking at, you know, I'm being a bit of a harsh critic here today, but there's another way of looking at that you know, everyone's scared to death of us because they don't want to look at themselves. And they think, and, you know, I've been in that situation where someone will, you know, I know you're analyzing me, Peter. And you know, I'm not doing anything like that. You know, we're talking about tennis or something. And someone will almost, you know, I know how you make your living. I know what you're doing to me right now. You are looking through me now and you can see my deepest fears or something. You know, nothing going on at all. So, you know, there's a certain way, the way we're put down is by people who are scared to death of us. Just the same as they're scared to death of looking at themselves. You know, the whole Pellin thing. You got to look in the mirror before you glance out the window and walk out the door. And Elizabeth.
It's sort of parallel, Peter. It's parallel. It's not spot on. It's parallel. There's something that happens occasionally in groups that I've been in where people turn the activity of being transparent into a badge of belonging. And that is really, I mean, that's like, it's such the content of what they're talking about may be absolutely in the transparency box, okay? I mean, something you didn't know about somebody, but how they present it and how they are relating to it, you know, those activities that they're disclosing to other people are objectified in their own mind. And then if they have a victim mentality about the whole thing, then that transparency reinforces how they are presenting themselves. And it doesn't really break down enough so that, you know, white person says to a black person, you know, oh, you know, when I was a kid, I was taught to hold my breath around black people. Well, you know, yeah, okay. But what happens with that, right? It's disclosure, right? But it's not genuine.
Yeah, well, I think that's the bit. And I think that's in many ways both our strength and at times our weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And that is having the genuine quality. Because when we're having, and this is where Maslow was right, you know, when we are being authentic, and in our words coming from the caring life force, but also sort of coming from the middle of the pendulum, middle-ish on the pendulum, then it can come across.
Okay.
But if it becomes a performance, okay,
Right.
And that certainly happens in AA, but AA has something else that prevents it becoming toxic.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I'm just sort of, a lot of this is sort of,
Yeah.
every now and then I want to say, you know, this is the whole truth and I've only got this little bit of it, okay. Need to have a card to hold up. I think often when it goes wrong, when it becomes a performance, both in the usual sense of that word and also in the our sense of the word in terms of performance life force.
Mm-hmm.
When it becomes a performance, when it becomes competitive, and this is where I think AA nailed it, and when there's not a hierarchy, okay? And I think it's the dangers of gurus who have huge strength. I don't deny that. But the guru is often not quite, I can see so far, of course, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. It's sort of, I can see so far because I'm the wisest person you've ever come across. I think that's sort of different. And again, I want to say, you know, I've only got my little bit of the truth. But I think then you get a certain competitiveness about being transparent, okay? Now you do, and you don't get the competitiveness in Alcoholics Anonymous. What you do get there, it sort of becomes institutionalized, okay?
Mhm.
And it sort of becomes a habit, and someone goes to the meeting and tells the same story. Everyone's tolerant about it, and the person's been telling the same story for 25 years. But somehow, because they don't have, there's no authenticity there, and I think it's because the person who's there for 25 years is not sort of superior to,
Right.
and the person who's got, celebrating 3 months of sobriety. And it's just different. And I think there's something about that part of us, which is sort of connecting to each other.
Mhm.
And I guess it's,
Peter?
yeah.
A is not a cult because in cults, people do as they're told. And I have 3 sponsees, so now I know that A
Yeah.
is not a cult because
Yeah.
people don't do as they're told.
Yeah.
And I don't tell my sponsees, I just suggest. And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and they don't do it. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
They're finally
Yeah.
calling every day, and so that's kind of cool.
Yes. Yes. That's very cool. I had a friend who had been a sponsor, and this was sort of heavy stuff. Mary.
Well, I just wanted to say that it's interesting that repeating the same story doesn't tend to happen in Al-Anon, and I think it's because you haven't got a specific drink or drug addiction. What happens in Al-Anon is because you're supposed to be working on yourself, the stories and the recovery shift and stay really authentic. But what does happen with this equality thing and not being superior at all to newcomers is, I've shared this with you, Peter, but not here, is this rather delightful thing I find that somebody, they've been in the program, say, 27 years, and they'll say, I was sitting around the dining table and I knew exactly what every member of my family should be doing with their lives. And everyone starts laughing because they know that the Al-Anon addiction, if there is one, is kind of for control and management. So everyone's always saying, I'm like you, newcomer, right?
Yeah.
And sharing how they're trying to get out away from that. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting to see that in work. The other thing I wanted to say, because of the time, is did you want to refer to performance and material life force in relation to the title of the forum? I'm just aware we've talked about the caring life force. It doesn't matter because we could do it another time, but I just wanted to raise that question.
No, we'll bring it up another time. They're big issues. I guess I'd just like to make time for people to say. Do you want to say something, Cynthia?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of looking at this from of an outsider because there's a lot of talk about the therapist profession, and I'm not a therapist. And I've never been one. I've been to therapy. I've worked with therapists as colleagues, and now I'm an astrologer who does. There's some parallels, and talk about a not respected profession. That's certainly not. And there's issues. So, as an outsider in the field and somebody who's partaked of it, the authenticity, I think, is a real big thing because the times I felt like I've gotten the most benefit from a therapist has been when the therapist has just been a person. I mean, you know, and not, I mean, speaking about diagnosed, when I was talking about being an astrologer, what I really do think my purpose, I had a therapist tell me, you know, I had him tell me, oh, well, you know, you're just trying to get a hold on the future because you've had so much trauma. So you want to find some way to control the future. And he believed that, you know, and I kind of, you know, and I was still you know, I don't have a real, I mean, I have my performance life forces got a lot of trauma mixed up with it. But you know, then you start to doubt yourself, and there's just, but I will say one thing in terms of Pellin, in terms of being something different, and I know on the things, just as how Pellin is different. You know, when my first interaction came through Mary, and that was the first thing I really felt, and I don't mean to be harsh, but that was the first time I actually felt something that was coming from a therapeutic thing was real. I did get in 12-step groups, I did do CODA and adult children of alcoholics for a while, and it was helpful, but you know, and I did do it for many years, but that was even more authentic than, you know, like when I went to see a therapist for, you know, sometimes he was real, but sometimes, you know, it was just like coming down on high, saying things about you, and then once they've made some decision as to what it is about you, everything that you say becomes, you know, becomes confirmation of that. And you know, but the thing, though, I hope I don't want to spend a lot of time, take a lot of time because we're near the end, but one of the things when you're talking about transparency, and it's a little different as an astrologer, because you know, your biggest research is yourself. I mean, you know, I don't have 24, you know, if I'm looking at what the planets are doing, I don't have 24-hour access to anybody else but myself. You know, I can, and maybe my spouse somewhat, but you know, I know what's going on, and I know, you know, in fact, there's many times, you know, you have a bad day. And there's a little difference. Of course, they tell astrologers, you know, don't just use your own chart, because then it gets kind of egocentric, you know, because everybody's interested in their own stuff. But I don't know that that relates or anything, but I'm just thinking when you're talking about transparency, and that I just a lot of things that I'm just listening to because it's, you know, not my field. So sorry.
Mary Stapleton, do you want to say anything?
My thoughts are a bit unfocused, Peter. I can't quite get a hold on what I'm trying to think about. So no, I don't have anything to offer.
Yeah, that's okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Peter?
Yeah.
Peter?
Yeah.
My best therapists were transparent too when they were real people and they shared their stuff, you know, stuff about their life.
Yeah.
Not that they're the same as sponsors, but my best therapists and my
No,
best
you
sponsors were transparent. There was some crossover.
Yeah, I mean, I get into a bit of a rant when I get into my critical side, but they're real good people in the field. They're real good people in any field. Some of what we want to do is sort of generalize out from the good people. And that's a whole lot of what the tools are about. Johnny, do you want to come in?
Hello. All right. This is very interesting. I am a sponge of knowledge, and I feel like I'm connected with everybody for the universe. This is how this all came together. I don't know. This is interesting, and I feel that I'm more connected with everybody here, and I'm going to try to explain how what I learned today. Give a summary, but I feel that basically my mind, there's a pipeline and irrigating, you know, and if you run too much pressure through it, you'll blow the pipe out, you know. So today's knowledge and wisdom and love that I learned today, I was like trying to hold on, you know, because a lot of great stuff went in there. And if you watch the video, you'll actually watch me cry and cover my mouth. So so I'm going to be my authentic self right now and hold on for this. It may not make sense, but I needed this free therapy, so thank you. So it goes, it's interesting because I was in the moment with everyone as my brain's absorbing this. So it literally goes, I started crying. It literally goes back to Mary. And this is how I take notes the way I take notes now. When I was a kid, they forced you, this is how you should take notes. Now I'm just, since I broke away from the system, I'm kind of just doing it the way I would do it. So this is how my brain operates. The reason why is because I internally have been following like this guiding light that's been inside of me. And where I started crying was when Mary said Al-Anon, because that's what I discovered this week, either through you guys, I absorbed it through you guys or something, because I had a talk with my parents 2 days ago about me just loving myself. In my family, they have this chart of where everyone's born. I'm the only one born in December. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal in a family of 5, but no, this is a family of over 50 people. Like, how can I be the only one born in December? You know, so this whole time I'm feeling like left out, right? Somebody said they loved me. We went through all that. But I got to the point where I was dating this woman, beautiful woman, great, everything, nothing wrong, you know, but there's something wrong, right? And I go back to that codependency, which goes back to, I started, you know, and I'm like, wait, I'm stuck between, like, I drink, don't get me wrong, I do my stuff, but to me, it's not the first time someone goes, maybe you're not the alcoholic, maybe you're the Al-Anon person. You know, like, I've been thinking like my compass has been off. So it's kind of like, I used to be an artificial inseminary for the dairy industry. So when I thawed the semen out, someone goes, well, my brother would teach me, put 3 thermometers in, you know, that way, you know, your equipment's working properly. You know, if 3 thermometers are off, well, then, you know, it's not your fault, you know. So people are like thermometers for me. So with Mary said at the Al-Anon, because I was like, wow, that's why I was here. I was like, why am I in this meeting? Why am I even talking to you guys? I even wrote this shit out. Like what are we trying to get to? So I write this out so people don't say I'm full of bullshit now. So then I'm like going, right. And the reason why is because I'm going to share this, and with all due respect, it goes back to actually Cynthia. Because literally I had Cynthia read my chart. I come from a Roman Latin Catholic family, like, you don't do this stuff. But my insights are like, listen to your instincts. And so Cynthia explained a lot to me. It was like almost like recompassing my balance. And so then when Cynthia, and we talked about, I have a very caring life force. I thought I had a big performance, but really it's the caring. And when Mary was talking about performance, let's see here, I wrote this stuff down. But anyways, the Elizabeths, oh my God. So I was Elizabeth Rosenberg. You said a lot of things, and I almost wrote your last name, but right before the other Elizabeth chimed in. And it's just so profound, everything. And anyways, it all goes back to, if you follow my notes, it goes back to Mary and Al-Anon. About, that's why, because I was like, I need to find a support group and join that this week. And then boom. But to go back to that, it goes back to the Portuguese Man of War. Now, if you study the Portuguese Man of War, which I did this week, it's not a jellyfish. It's the I don't know if this relates to what we're doing, I guess. It's because it's a bunch of organisms working as a colony, but as one giant organism. So it's not a body, it's not a single organism, but it's not a multicellular organism either. It doesn't fit in any category. But together, they feed and nourish each other, but they're also their own individuals. So it's very interesting. So that's what happened before I went, all right, Portuguese Man of War. And then all of a sudden, boom, Mary Al-Anon self-care. Because that's what happened to my parents this week. I broke away, and back to Cynthia about, and this goes back to the Pellin tools. And so I literally drew a ship. And after Cynthia gave me my reading, I believe the universe talks to me through movies. So I'm watching this movie that's made in Canada about the fur trade, and they can't steal this guy's ship. They're trying to steal this ship. And the lady goes, I thought you could steal it. They're English. And she goes, I've never seen it. It's a whole different type of ship. It's rigged different. Nobody knows how to sail this ship. The tools are completely different. They've never seen it before. And the guy goes, oh, it's because it's a Portuguese ship. And the guy said, he goes, I'm not steady on land. I'm steady at the sea. And so so back to Cynthia read my chart, it's like, I'm not attached to anything. I'm kind of like the spare tire in the family, which is I'm kind of kicked in the back, but when there's an emergency, I'm there. And that's us running towards danger and being that. And so basically where Cynthia and Mary, that connection is of just accepting myself and knowing that I'm not going to be attached to anything. I'm not a land creature. I'm actually a ship. And that's the pendulum, you know, going with the flow, the water, and that my life isn't meant to be this stationary life that all right, you born, you die, you have a family, you die. I'm meant to be out there on the open water. But back to the vulnerability. So when you were vulnerable, if you watch one of our first tapes, that's what you hooked me in, was when you were vulnerable. Because Mary got me hooked in by being vulnerable. So that was already a done deal. And I already felt some connection with Mary in the past. So anyway, so when you were vulnerable and you shared about your 4 marriages, that's when I was like, all right, I'm in, you know. And I know this is not making sense to everybody else, but my brain just lit up on all this, and I'm going to process it more. But when Mary said the natural politician, so I kind of been, my family's big into politics, and I've been running away from it. I was the president of some certain things, and I just been running away from this shit because it goes back to what the Elizabeths were saying about how do you protect yourself and the caring life force, and that's when Mary was saying the pendulum is an instrument. And that's when I was like, oh, Portuguese man of war, it's a team effort, you know, but they're all individuals. And how do you get rid of the ego? That's what it was. And get back to authentic and get back down to earth, which is connecting with other people, which is ultimately for me is humanity. So I'd rather, instead of having competition, I would rather have cooperation. But that's where Mary was talking about the hierarchy of this certain group of individuals have kind of like, it's a paradigm shift. That's what I feel that's happening. I feel that, I'm going to be very bold when I say this. I believe that we're the light right now. And when you light, you're going to burn, you know, and as Jordan Peterson said, burn the dead wood, you know. So it goes back to, I guess, Moses on the mountain and the burning bush. It's like, yeah, there's a light and there's a fire, but you don't get burned by it. And I feel that that's what the connection I have here with everybody, which goes back to the Elizabeths. You just say very profound. It's very, very rich, very mind-opening. I can't say enough. I'm just going to leave it at that. But I love you guys. I feel that this is meant to be. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I mean, what you said, we'll finish up. And some of these will carry over to next time on Sunday.
Peter, does Nikki want to say anything? I don't think you invited Nikki.
Well, I was going to suggest you say something and go first in the ending round, Nikki, okay? I just want to say, just give me half a minute. I just want to say something to what you said, Johnny, about the light. And I guess I want to stay with my theme for me. Somehow or other, I'm saying the world in which I work, okay, fellow professional, somehow or other, we haven't been able to get that across. Because that's what we do have. We really have light to shine on things. And we haven't found a way to get that across with our humanity, okay? And I think that's what we need to learn. So someone could be, I'm a psychiatrist and I'm going to run for the local House of Representatives seat. And everyone says, great. That's what we need to find. Anyway, do you want to finish this up, Nikki, and also a chance for you to say something? But we're doing,
the end bit.
The end bit,
Yeah. Okay, I'm Nikki. I'm in Wimbledon, London.
Mhm.
One particular thing that struck me, I think it's Cynthia said about, you know, I'm the only, I forget what the way Cynthia said it, but I'm the only sample I've got. And I feel like that. I'm the 24/7 sample I've got for my therapy. So I just do my therapy on myself every spare minute. And that, it turns out, I think, has made me just a better and better therapist for other people over the years. But the thing about it is, whenever I go, because that means I go to workshops and things, try different things, and you know, sometimes I might meet somebody else at a group, and they're a therapist, and they say they're a therapist, and I don't say that I am, and I feel them having performance life force about it in some way. And then other times I have the practitioner themselves. I just think, if you're a therapist or a practitioner, why the heck you clearly stopped? You know, you're good at this, but it's really clear you have not been working on yourself for years, and I'm having to sort of struggle around coping with that. And it's a mystery to me why, if you're a therapist, why on earth, it's the best thing in the world, why on earth would you not do it? Like, if you're an ice cream seller, why would you not eat lots of ice creams? Because I would. Well, I mean, I think it's the best thing in the world. I'm not saying it is, but anyway, that is a mystery to me. And I'll say this other thing that was also struck me last year. Sometime I went to an Extinction Rebellion meeting because I met someone on the street who was giving out leaflets, and it was the next evening. And as it happened, one of the founders of it was at the meeting at the beginning to set it up. And it was so clear to me, because I know a fair bit about the different 12-step types of meetings, and it's just so clear that whoever the people are who set up Extinction Rebellion, it totally starts out with all sorts of different ingredients from the 12-step approach to things. And I forget, they had different rules and regs and everything, but it was just so like that. And it was so amazing and so safe and so straight and clear and clean and fresh. And then the minute that guy left, because he had to go and help set up another local meeting, all that could happen, I mean, there were all these rules and regs about you take it in turns to speak, you indicate that you've finished speaking. It was all that stuff, safety, 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 safety. And the minute he'd gone, okay, we carried on doing the rules and regs, but all that anyone could come up with then was, you know, people, to my mind, with lots of performance life force who've got craft skills and that, and coming up with ideas of how to go and spread the word in different creative, performance-y ways, which has just made my heart sink, just for my own, just because I haven't got enough performance life force and just uses up energy. So that was that. I didn't go anymore, unfortunately. Why am I saying that? Oh, but to do with all the stuff Peter was saying about AA, the basis of anything 12-step, it was so inspiring to me, that meeting, that was nothing to do with any therapeutic healing, personal healing of the individuals at it. It's a total material life force objective of saving the flipping planet. And yet, the way the organization is run, is set up, is founded upon, is just all about this personal safety, and it just made it was just mind-boggling to me that works equally well in a whole other realm. And I suddenly thought, the world could be run like that. we could have that as the basis of governments, etc. And that it was so simple. These people had set this thing up, and it was just so obvious. And whenever I get something, occasionally they send me something and I read it. And it's just like drinking water in a desert, whatever they send me to read. I can never take part. It's all about, it would require, too much material life force for me. I'm not going to go and chain myself to railings or anything. And I mean, they're obviously not doing that at the moment. But just reading how they approach the problem is like ointment. So just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Stacey? We'll come back. Elizabeth Rosenberg?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth from Eugene, Oregon. And the most powerful thing my current therapist ever said to me was, I can tell I've screwed up and I just want to listen to you.
Yeah. Thanks. Elizabeth, the other Elizabeth? We're just saying who we are and where we are.
I'm good right now. I'm Elizabeth Hurwitz from Ann Arbor, Michigan, and in the States, and I'm good for now. It's really been,
Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
Stacy from Las Vegas,
yeah.
Nevada.
Okay.
And all the talk about AA really makes me flattered that we've done so much good in the world, even though it wasn't my invention. It was Bill Wilson's and Dr. Bob's.
Yeah, talking about politics and power, I think it's almost a crime that AA has not been given a Nobel Prize. Something weird about that. Mary Stapleton.
I'm Mary. I'm in East Sussex in UK.
Okay, thanks. Cynthia?
Hi, Cynthia in Kankakee, Illinois. And I just want to say, I hope I'm now a little nervous because I had said something about that I did it. And I've seen it do wonderful things for people. And I actually think that part of what happened with me, particularly when I was in codependence, because that was the same time I was a lawyer, and it was just too much. It was too much of my job hearing people talk about relationships, because that's what I was doing. So, I mean, I guess I'm over because I was talking out. I was like, I don't want to detract anything from what I said. So by that, so.
Johnny?
All right, so what I got from this is what I needed, and I love that. As a farmer, I'm just going to remodify somebody else's equipment. So for me, the pendulum tool is a sailing ship. The heart is your self-care, being
Okay.
steady. So I really appreciate everybody from Los Angeles.
Okay, thanks. I'm Peter. I'm in King's Lynn in England. Mary?
I'm Mary in Rosarito Beach, Mexico. And Peter, if you can come back for a brief visit with meeting with me and Nikki, we just need to discuss some business thing briefly.
Sure. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and I'll see you on Sunday.
You are unmuted.
Stay safe, guys.
Stay safe.